Hi, I'm Mark Derzetta. I'm the founder and CEO of ITC Tax. And with me today is Stephen Shaw.
Yeah, we just want to welcome y'all to the ITC Strategic Tax Podcast. And what topic were we thinking about talking about today, Mark?
Today, our topic is going to be the pollution control exemption that's available in a lot of states. It's a statute driven rule, but it's available in a lot of states. And it's for some states, it's a permanent exemption.
Yeah.
You only have to file it once. Other states, you may have to file the form every year with the rendition, but it's a very generous exemption in the states that do grant it.
hmm In some states like Texas, they'll have what they call a tier one list. It gives you a good example of what type of equipment might qualify for each item within that list, that tier one determination. And if it qualifies within that, then it's pretty much a guarantee. For the most part, it still has to go through the process of being approved by the TCEQ here in Texas. And there's a form to fill out, but that gives you some guidelines as to what equipment you might have that would qualify.
Sure. There are a couple deadlines, say here in Texas, you have to keep in mind. The
Yep.
TCQ, who you file the application with in
Mhm.
Texas, they have what they call a PEL, predetermined equipment list, tier one equipment devices. Then there's a tier two,
Mhm.
which is not on the list, but it's 100% exempt. And then there's a tier three, which are what they call partial exemptions. Anyhow, they would like you to file owners to file for this exemption by January 31st to, as they say, guarantee approval by April 30th.
Mhm.
If you file later, say maybe April 15th, you're probably almost definitely not going to get it approved. However, you can still file up until April 30th for the exemption. But if you want to get it approved, it's January 31st is the cutoff date that the TCEQ requests. Now, that's just for the filing with the TCEQ itself. There's also a filing that must be done with the local central or county appraisal district that's also due prior to May 1st or most generally April 30th. But there is a one-page form, I guess now it's probably two, very simple form that you file for the equipment you're asking to be exempt or that has already been exempted by the TCEQ.
Yeah.
You file it by April 30th and prior to May 1st. Once it's filed, once everything's been exempted, then from then on, it never becomes an issue. What you have to remember when you file with the TCQ initially is, and they receive the application, there's also a copy of everything provided to the local appraisal district.
Mhm.
And we've seen sometimes where maybe some items are approved by the TCQ, but maybe the local appraisal district feels they're not really pollution related.
Mhm.
Those items would be there, that investment would be there only because it allows the plant to operate. It's not really reducing pollution. That's almost a byproduct of allowing the plant to operate.
Right.
So, or maybe it's recovering some of the byproduct and it's going back into the process. So there really is an economic benefit, at least in the county's mind.
Mhm.
So anyhow, you can file it. The TCQ will approve it, but there's no guarantee that the local appraisal district won't challenge it.
Right. The chief appraiser has the right to review that list to determine what he or she feels qualifies based on the approval of the TCEQ.
Yeah, I guess, maybe they feel they're more familiar with what should be exempt.
Hmm.
Maybe they feel it's the loss of a lot of value off of the tax roll.
Right.
Maybe they just don't want somebody, maybe they don't like somebody, I don't know. But anyhow, sometimes they will challenge that. We've even seen where they've had hearings and then nobody attends the hearings for the appraisal district. They just filed a challenge and nothing is done.
Yeah.
Or maybe the TCQ has approved it and then later on the appraisal district doesn't exempt it. So it's too late to challenge the approval of the equipment, but later on they'll deny the exemption when you file with them. And so that creates a whole different issue. Then it's a different it's a value issue. It's not a challenge to the TCQ approval of the equipment.
Right.
As far as the equipment itself goes or the devices, you can pretty much tell, but any kind of a processing plant is going to have pollution control. Anybody that works with dust collectors, sweepers, water trucks, anybody with wastewater treatment plants. There's just a whole slew of devices, whether you're in chemicals, semiconductors, cement plants, ready mix plants, plastics, refineries. Almost every plant out there here in Texas is going to have pollution control. Steel mills. What's amazing is some of them have never filed for that equipment.
Mhm.
And this law went into effect, back in the 90s, 1/1/94. So any device that's been added since January 1 of 94 has the potential to be qualified.
Yeah.
So you could file this year by January 31st for something that was added in, say, 1995. So you could file for it and you could get it approved. So going forward for 96, it would be exempt, but it's not retroactive where you can go back and get it exempted for prior years,
Right.
only for the current year going forward. That's why you don't want to miss filing for this type of equipment because what I think is a very generous exemption.
It is a very generous exemption because, to Mark's point, it's an exemption that lasts the life of the equipment. In some cases, like in Texas, you file the forms, you qualify once, and once it's approved, you don't have to you know file any annual forms. And in other states, there are annual forms to fill out, but the exemption lasts as long as file the forms timely for that type of equipment. So, any other important items to think about, Mark, on
Oh,
this?
sure. I think pollution control, it's available not just in Texas from the TCEQ. There's other states that allow for pollution control as well. One is Florida. There it would be exempt. They call it the FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection. In North Carolina, they call it the Diener Department of Natural Resources. Louisiana, there's Alabama. There's a lot of states that allow for pollution control exemptions.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a formal process like Texas. Other times, maybe you just identify it and, it's not being taxed or it's being taxed at maybe a lower assessment ratio than normal investment would be.
Yeah.
But it's something to consider anytime you have a processing plant, anytime you have a lot of investment in something that's either controlling pollution, removing pollution, or maybe just some sort of a monitoring device. But
Mhm.
it's something very important. You just have to remember here in Texas, the critical date is file by January 31st with the TCEQ and file prior to May 1st with the local appraisal district.
Mhm.
And then, make sure you get it, granted for that year. And it should always be granted going forward from there. But sometimes when there's a change of ownership, don't be surprised if the appraisal district
Mhm.
removes it because there's been a change of ownership. The other thing we've seen for, like, say, drilling rigs, when they move from one county to another, some counties will say, well, it was certified, say, Pickett County and Midland County. Now we're going to leave it exempt in Reeves County. Other times, an appraisal district, another county may say, well, I'm glad you got it exempted last year there, but now that you're over here this year, we want you to file in this county.
Yeah.
But it's, like I said, very generous exemption. There's like mud pumps. There's all sorts of things associated, even with drilling rigs that would be exempt.
There's a lot of equipment that people generally don't know about, understand that what it would qualify like a pollution control, and so it's very important to understand the assets that you have what they do for you, and that's something that we can help with. Just reviewing the asset list and looking at the description of the assets, a lot of times provides enough information for us to know that that's an item that could or might qualify. It doesn't hurt to fill out the forms with the TCQ for the various stages or the various tiers, if you will. There are fees involved, but they're very nominal in the sense of the value of the assets that you're trying to qualify for pollution control, and the overall benefit that you're going to receive by the assets being exempt. So something to look into, something that could be very beneficial for you as a company, in your facility as far as tax savings, and but keep in mind the deadlines that Mark mentioned, January 31st to file with the TCEQ, so they have time to review the filings and that provide for you a determination if it qualifies. So then you have time to file with the local appraisal districts by the 31st, what that equipment is and the determination approved by the TCEQ. Is that all, Mark?
That's all I have, Steve.
Yeah. Good stuff. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Anyhow, thank you all so much for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We'll be glad to steer you in the right direction and make sure that you don't pay more than your fair share of tax.
Have a good day. Thank you.